All right, we are back. JD, how are you today?
All good, man.
What did you get into last night? I think the audience wants to hear this stuff now.
Oh man, it was a very very light night. I'm kind of battling, a little cold. And we got Grammy weekend coming up, so I'm just charging up for the weekend.
Were you working the phones in the NBA trade deadline?
I wouldn't say I was working the phones. I was getting messages.
You were getting messages,
getting information here and there, but it's not like I'm actively looking for it or working the phones. I don't have a particular guy that's of interest right now.
Well, that's probably good news for your guys.
Man, yeah.
Someday we're gonna get you to spill the beans.
Yeah, someday.
But until then, I've been looking forward to this episode for a long time. We have my old, very good friend, writer and director, Amir Farha here. Amir, how are you?
I'm great, man. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming to the Chance Bending Studios here in Studio City, California.
It's an honor.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure. So for our audience, Amir is what I would deem as an incredible director. He's worked on a number of documentaries, shows, commercials. He's done a lot in the world of sports. Some of his notable clients include Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, and much, much more. So I really want to get into your process, how you think about stuff, how you're making decisions, and just all the good stuff. JD, this is going to be a good one.
Absolutely.
So Amir, tell us a little bit right now about what you're working on currently. Do you have anything you can talk about that you're in the works?
Yeah, working in commercials primarily, and also exploring opportunities in television in the narrative space, coming off a program with Sony Pictures Television. I was fortunate enough to shadow David Katzenberg on 2 episodes of Schooled, which is a spinoff of the Goldbergs, and that's been something that I've been very focused on exploring, is getting at taking the learnings from the commercial space and filmmaking in that medium and trying to translate it into a longer form and tell greater stories. And it's great with what's happening in Hollywood right now with all the studios are looking for new voices from diverse backgrounds, and the people at Sony Pictures accepted me into their program, and I was named a fellow at the end of 2018, and then did the program with Mr. Katzenberg, and looking for more opportunities there. We just had an event at on the lot where they screened some work. One of my pieces was chosen, so that was screened for some executives and some showrunners, and looking forward to seeing what 2019 brings in that space. And in the meantime, staying busy with the branded content thing, which I still very much love. I just got done in New York. I was shooting with the great Jay Williams, formerly of Duke and the Chicago Bulls, who's I got to know a little bit, and is really a fantastic human being. And
even as an Arizona fan, you can say Jay Will. Jay Will is a good guy.
Yeah, I mentioned that to him. He did not apologize, which I didn't expect him to. But the thing is when you're an Arizona Wildcat fan and you come across great college basketball players, there's a good chance they beat us at some point. Because I think one thing we do is we sort of we grew up there, and we have a lot of affinity for that basketball program, but we inflate the success we've had. I think quite to a certain degree when you really compare it to some of the other great blue blood programs like Duke. It's like astronomically different, where it's like, oh, you have one national championship. We don't actually know where to put all the banners.
Y'all got to refresh my memory. I'm usually up on this type of stuff. What happened back
Jay
in the day?
In 2001 in Minneapolis, that a Gilbert Arenas and I believe Jason Gardner, Richard Jefferson, Lauren Woods led Arizona Wildcat team met Duke with Jay Williams and Mike Dunleavy in the national championship game, and the game was actually coming down pretty competitive down towards the end, and I think Jay sort of went on a tear in the last 5 minutes and played like the four-time All-American he was, and drove a dagger into our hearts.
And controversial non-foul call
Sure.
On him and with Jason Gardner. But most importantly, it was right around the time of Bobby Olson's death. Lou Ellison's wife. So there was,
Yes.
this was the year that Arizona was supposed to win.
Yes.
Yes.
And it really hasn't been the same since for us.
No.
And actually, as we speak right now, it could be really unraveling, as far as I know. But because I know that there's the NCAA they love to come after us. I don't know. They just someone somewhere really pissed off ESPN and the NCAA at the University of Arizona. So I'm just calling it out. There's a lot of other programs out there that are not doing things on the up and up. Namely Kansas, namely Kentucky, but I'm not here to name names. But Jay and I shot an Acura commercial as a promotion for the March Madness tournament. It was fun to work with him. And then at the same time, I've been preparing for a real quick mini documentary with the folks at Nike on with Kevin Durant about a shoe that he's launching and talking about the themes and influences of the '90s, which people that are listening kind of don't know that we're at Chance Bending Studios. We're sort of surrounded by a lot of iconography of the '90s. Reminds me of my room when I was a kid. So, I think it's I'm lucky. Things I was telling Jordan when you were outside for a minute that every day I sort of have to remain in a deep level of gratitude that the things that I was passionate about as a kid are the things I get to continue to be passionate about, and I actually get to make a living doing. So it's, I have to approach every opportunity when I'm in the space of popular culture that I love, and basketball specifically. That how grateful and how lucky I am to get to be able to do things like that.
As someone who creates the imagery, the pop culture for us. With Adidas and Nike and all of these incredible brands and shows and film and documentary, how did you get into this? Why don't we back up and talk a little bit about how you got into this? Because I think that our audience is out there. They probably want to better understand you, how you do this, and then basically your thoughts on how you see the space sort of moving and evolving. But the question is, how did you get involved in this? How did you get your start?
It really just comes down to I was never comfortable with the path that is sort of laid out for you, and within the structure of going to school, getting a degree, going to law school, becoming a doctor, all those different things. Like I think for me, I was always uncomfortable with the idea of doing just a 9-to-5 job that I didn't do something that I loved, and I know that's a lot of people don't get to do that. But for me, I was very resistant to that. And even as I went to school and even as I went to college, I took classes and I did things that just interested me. And I was always interested in writing. And I majored in creative writing at University of Arizona. And, luckily one day, what one does with a creative writing degree from University of Arizona with an emphasis on poetry, which I will get to later.
Well done, Amir.
Yeah, thank you. Well, what you end up doing is you bartend. So I was working in a bar. Lucky enough, a friend of mine's sister came into that bar and told me about an advertising agency in Los Angeles. She asked me why I was bartending with a college degree, and she told me, you're smart. You have all this stuff going for you. You should be doing more with your life. She told me about an advertising agency in Los Angeles called Shy a Day, who at the time I didn't even know they existed. I didn't know anything about it, and I found out about this profession of being able to become a copywriter and being able to make commercials. And the one thing I will say that is I think maybe might have been the epicenter for all of this was my passion and love for basketball as a kid, and particularly like the branding of Nike and Adidas and all these basketball commercials that came out around the time that just sort of blew my mind. And then obviously in 1989 when Do the Right Thing came out, I think when I saw that movie, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I just knew that I wanted to create something like that. So I was always driven towards that. I was always wanting to write. I was attracted to something in the creative field. When I found out about advertising and that these guys had Apple as a client, they had Sony PlayStation, they're doing some cool commercials on TV that I had seen. I moved to Los Angeles, showed up at their doorstep, started answering phones, and from there, that just started a career of, bouncing around. I was worked in editing. I worked in their dub room, and I went back to school. I went to an art school in Atlanta where the prep that specializes in creative portfolio development. So I went there and made a portfolio, moved to New York and did the Madison Avenue thing, and worked at a advertising agency there, and then came across some directors as I was selling work and doing bigger and bigger things with bigger brands that had made some of the commercials that I was talking about earlier. Director like Paul Hunter became a mentor of mine. Paul directed a commercial called Freestyle, which everyone's seen, where features basketball players dancing on a stage and creating to music and a beat. And he had directed the D'Angelo, How Does It Feel music video. He did Hypnotize. He did all these iconic music videos. And so Paul directed. I met him ironically for the first time on a Burger King commercial, and then we did an Adidas documentary together. And he really let me into his process, and so that's when I started getting the idea of becoming a filmmaker and directing these things. And he actually let me run some second unit with some of the athletes, and then from there, I got a break through my brother, who was also in advertising, had a short film series he needed directed for one of his clients, and he gave it to me. And then from there, I was able to parlay that into a transitioning from being a writer and a creative director to being a director. And then my contacts at Adidas, who I'd worked so closely with, came one day, just showed up and said, "Hey, we have this thing. We need someone we trust. It's really precious to us that someone who understands the brand and understands this athlete knows what they're doing, and we don't have to be there every step of the way." And I said, "Great, what is it?" They're like, "Well, Derrick Rose just blew his knee out. We want to make a documentary, and that documents his comeback." And so that was really the other big opportunity from Ryan Moreland over at Adidas, and that really took me to the next level. And that's a long answer. I think the short answer is I found something that I love to do, and I just went about doing it whenever the opportunity presented itself, and got me closer to realizing that goal. I didn't have the end goal of being a documentary filmmaker or a filmmaker or doing television like I was talking about. I think I think I evolved into that, and maybe that was always the goal. But I think for me, it's just always looking for open doors and going through them, and being willing and trying to learn from that experience, and to keep pushing myself as an artist and as a filmmaker.
I got like 1,000 questions for you, man.
Yeah.
Well, comment followed up by a question. I think this is the second time in a row, and it's a common theme on Transbending, that we find people that are in one field, and that field basically helps them with the transition and to ultimately get into what they want to do. So last time with Bill, corporate sales, you worked in ads first, basically sales. How do you think that's impacted you now on the creative side? Because I know that knowledge that you attained by doing that basically has put you in a position to actually know what you're doing now with the creativity that you're producing.
Yeah. I think what has really benefited me, and it's even benefiting me now in some of my experiences, I'm finding myself making another transition, is that there's always commerce that comes with art, especially successful art. And being able to not only articulate your idea and be passionate about it, and especially when you're dealing with subjective issues like tastes, like, I like red, you like blue, and I'm going to say, red's better, this is the way it is. And one thing being in advertising and watching some of these creative directors and strategists come together and build decks and build cases for their points of view has really helped me not just say, I think it should be this way, but to develop a rationale behind that, and to get people on board and get them excited about it. And really, it's just in the same thing as storytelling, and in a really great script, there's subtext beneath what people were talking about. And filmmaking and in advertising ideas, there's a subtext at the same time that you have to be conscious of, and you have to be able to articulate. And when you convey that with conviction, and they may not always agree with you, but if you can speak articulately to that reasoning, and like why you have a point of view on it, and be able to draw a reference, and be able to tell them why you're inspired by it, and make it even personal to an extent. Always the best presentations I ever saw were began with personal stories, and you believed that it wasn't just a guy who's selling Levi's, put on that pair of jeans, right off the rack, and the tag just came off. Like, he walked in with those jeans that he's had for 40 years, and he tells you a story about that, and you're going to kind of listen to how he wants to tell that story about that brand. So I think the advertising side of it really gave me a way of articulating an argument, and selling an idea, and having a point of view, as opposed to just we talked about screamers earlier. There's artists can be screamers and can be petulant, and there's only a few guys, especially in this modern day. There's not that many guys out there that are good enough to be assholes, and you have to be able to play, and you have to be able to explain yourself.
I think even Steve Jobs in 2019 would catch a bad one, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not sure he would fly in 2019, to be honest.
It's a hard thing to say, because in 2019, would he fly if the iPhone wasn't if we're talking about 2019, where all the stuff that he was able to will into existence didn't exist? Because if all that stuff's existing and he's still responsible for it, there's probably still a bit of God persona and God light around him that you might forgive that. But I do think I know what you're saying in terms of the climate of harassment, and the climate of maybe of bullying, in which he's been called. And I actually, I was fortunate enough at Chiat Day to be in that aura a little bit around that advertising campaign when he came back. So he pushed people, but he pushed people towards greatness. So I that's a tough one, but you're probably right.
I agree with you though, Ben. I saw something. I think I was watching The Breakfast Club, and this was around one of the many times that Kanye was on one of his rants. And not that I agree with this point, but it is thought-provoking, because I'm the ultimate fan of this guy, and I think he still would be big. But I think Charlamagne might have mentioned that maybe Tupac wouldn't be seen in the same light as this beloved figure, like if he was in the climate today doing the things that he did. Who knows? But to your point, you know what I'm saying? Some of the legends and the people we idolize from the past, you never know how they might be perceived.
Yeah, and like we were saying before the show, Amir, eras do come back. We were saying how Gen X were slackers, right? Like, it wasn't cool to achieve, and then Amir was sort of saying, yeah, maybe it's going to come back a little bit where that's cool again. Maybe we'll see the return of Tupac and Steve Jobs, but here in 2019, it doesn't seem like it's happening.
I think what you bring up, though, Jordan, is interesting, and I was talking about it where, because of there was this mystique around these guys like Tupac and Biggie, and guys like Jordan and AI and all these basketball players in the 90s, and even I would say even up until 10 years ago. Now that we have social media, I feel like that mystique has gone, and there's some of the commercials I was talking about, like the great basketball commercials. I think sports commercials in general have suffered because of it, because it used to be, open on LeBron having breakfast with his kids, and you were like, whoa. Oh my God, I can't believe what I'm looking at, dude. This dude's getting he's got a Bentley in his garage. He's a garage. What does that look like? And then, like, you see in his gym, and every morning, for better or worse, you're seeing where these guys live, and you're seeing their play-by-play of their day-to-day. So the unexpected nature of those commercials, when they would come on and show a side of these guys' lifestyle that you just had never seen before, that sort of shock is gone. And maybe with guys like Tupac now, like, if he was running around with Insta stories, I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't be as great.
Right.
Maybe it wouldn't be as great.
Right. It might be, hey, Tupac's going crazy again, man. Like, kind of how we view Kanye. But it's crazy that you just brought that up, because that was one of my questions I was going to ask you. I think any of us who are sports enthusiasts, obviously I'm 27, so I don't have as much knowledge as you guys.
Thanks for being nice.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm a kid that's influenced heavily by that era. I grew up straight in it, So I'm partial to that era. Unlike a lot of my peers today, like, of course, I'm a part of my generation, and I love everything we're doing. But I got a sympathy and I got an appreciation for the past era. And I think any of us would agree that the past ads, whether it's Little Penny, whether it's Be Like Mike, whether it's whatever you want to say, it can't compare to today. And I was going to ask you your opinion on it, but I never thought of it like that. And I think that is, I'm 100% with you. Like, the access that we have to everybody today, like, any of us could pick up our phone right now and see what LeBron is thinking, see what he's doing, see whatever. So when a commercial come on, it's like, man, I just was scrolling on my timeline and I saw Brian. So
Amir, when you're shooting KD or whoever you're shooting today, does that come into your mind? This idea, like, are you trying to go the opposite way, or are you trying to like make them inaccessible? Like, do you feel like that's a trend that's going to start? We're going to start to see that happen due to social media.
I never have really like consciously thought of it that way. I think you're just trying to find a story and a point of view that it really comes down to like what are they saying and what that is interesting, and what are they offering that can maybe just disrupt for a second. I don't know that I don't necessarily know that I'm thinking of it through that lens of like, can we show? You're always looking for interesting places to depict people, and I'm not really sure. That's you kind of caught me off guard with that question, but I don't know that I have an answer for that.
I got a thought for you guys. I got a question, and Ben, I think we're in agreement because I know you're of the mindset of the culture we're living in today when it comes to social media as a whole, content, push it. That's how you get your brand. That's how you stay alive. I mean, if you go away for 2 weeks, you're forgotten about at this point. You know how music is. Someone comes out with an album, in 2 weeks, it's 2 years old. But I think there's an element of like what you're getting at with the mystique. And some examples I'm talking about is like when Macaulay Culkin just did the Amazon, I think the Alexa, I think that hit because it's like, when's the last time you saw him? You know what I'm saying? Like if Jay-Z does a commercial who rarely is out, I think it'll hit. If Denzel does it, like I think these guys that keep their mystique do still have a presence when it comes to like world of doing ads.
That's the biggest dilemma that people face too, is when they do go about doing that and they do bring a Macaulay Culkin out. He did that. I think that was for Google, and we talk about it with the Super Bowl because I think the turning point for that mystique and using celebrity and how celebrity sort of taken over that platform, and now it's almost driving the idea. And you even see it with the commercials that are coming out. It's like the idea is to use the celebrity. There's no idea beneath it, right? And I think the day it started was the day it was I think it was in 2012, and Chrysler did an ad that came out of nowhere, blew the doors off everybody, that David Gordon Green directed, that showed Clint Eastwood walking into halftime tunnel. And he was talking about it's halftime. They strategically placed the ad during halftime, and he made this analogy and this metaphor to it being halftime in America. It was right around the midterm. It was right at the elections were about to come in. We were going to decide if we were going to vote Obama in for a second term. And he was talking about halftime. He was talking about all this stuff, and it was all tied to this brand. And no one could believe that they could get Clint Eastwood to do an ad. Mm-hmm. And that just like all of a sudden the floodgates were off. And now it's like people that you never thought in a million years you'd see in an ad are showing up. And now the mystique I think it's not even so much now like, okay, can I get Drake in an ad? Yes. Now, but what is Drake doing that is interesting now? Right. I think it's not just Drake. It used to just be cool. Like, I'm going to show him driving and show that he drives like a regular person. That used to be interesting. Okay, well now that's not interesting. Now, if he's driving and talking on his phone to Richard Branson, that's something I'm interested in, because then I want to know what this guy who's out there balling like a rapper, do all this stuff, playing sold out shows, and like he's going to a show in his $100,000 car and he's talking to like one of the most successful businessmen. On that to me is that's something I don't necessarily see coming. That's unexpected. I guess those are the kinds of things like, with KD, I want to show him. I don't want to just show him standing in a record store surrounded by 90s nostalgia. I want to show him sitting against the floor surrounded by the records like he's a kid going through all this stuff, and really just lost in sort of the memory and the nostalgia of it all. And like, what's a different way we can do it, right? That's not just expected. So I think to answer your question is like it's not just enough to show them anymore. So they have to be doing something we didn't expect, or offer a point of view that we maybe just didn't see coming, or humanize them in such a way that maybe we didn't really at least offer something about them that we didn't know.
Yeah, as a tech guy, I feel like we're in the beginning days of just a massive subscription roll up on the internet, where the first 20 years of the internet was really ad supported business models, which was really focused on making sure page views, right? Like that's why we have all this Facebook, Russia stuff. Is like everything is the incentive is to make you click on the article. And now that subscription models are coming in, I think the interesting question as content creators and as personalities and influencers that we have to answer is, okay, if we start putting some content behind a subscription bundle, and we're seeing this with Spotify, Netflix, Amazon, and so forth, and it's just going to keep going. Where's the dividing line? Like you need the attention, right? So you need to put out free content. But at the other side of this, you're going to need quote unquote premium content to place behind that wall for that subscription bundle. And I think it's an interesting question for someone like Jay-Z. Like Jay-Z has to create premium content that you pay for, but he also has to create free content that's worthy of attention. Right. And I think for someone like you, Amir, you're going to ultimately have to figure out where that line is for so many interesting personalities.
I mean, truth be told, I desperately don't want any part of it anymore. I want to tell story. To me, my goal is not to figure out how to sell. I don't think I was put on this planet to figure out how I could sell content or get eyeballs on and get subscriptions. And I think there's people out there for that. I want to tell the stories that hopefully draw you to that. But it doesn't fascinate me.
It sounds like there's a lot of similarities to, musicians. Like they don't want to get into how can I chart? How can I be number one? Like you just want to stay in the creative mode and then it just comes.
It takes you out of it. And hopefully I can make something that is good enough that, when something's good, you find it. I don't know if I'm being manipulated by an algorithm. I try not to get caught up in all that. I think it's a rabbit hole that I don't want to go down and explore just how I know I'm not original. I know that a lot of stuff that comes up my way is being fed to me because of my behaviors, and I'm okay with that. But I do think we still have the power of word of mouth. We still have artists and in the music and the filmmaking worlds and in all walks of life that are creating amazing things that rise to the top. And I definitely do not want to be staying up at night figuring out how. I think the brands have to do that. It still comes down to storytelling and power of messaging. But there's a whole other side of it that I don't know that I'm.
So as a director and writer, do you purposely, consciously keep that out of your creation?
I don't. I try to keep in mind the audience, and I try to keep in mind that I do want people to see what I'm making, and I try not to make things so narrow that only 5 people will understand them. I am thinking about a broader sense, and especially when a lot of my stuff is branded. Yes, it does have to appeal. It doesn't have to talk to everybody, but there should be a little bit of something for everybody in it that they can relate to. But I fight this battle when we talked about art and commerce, being able to sell your idea, and then you can't really argue with analytics when people have proof, they have focus groups, and they have all these other things to back up why this other idea might work better, and you can't argue with that. But I have to sort of keep things in a creator's through a creator's lens and a filter that way. Otherwise, if I start thinking about the process or what the size of the button is and all those little things, then I think it's taking me out of that stuff. I think you need to revisit after. I can get involved in that game plan, but if you're trying to hire an artist, if you're trying to hire a guy to paint something on the side of a wall, you can't like stand over his shoulder and say, our analytics show that in the bottom right hand corner, this color blue works better for traffic. It's like he's not going to be able to create the best thing he's going to create. It's just not going to work that way. It's tough though. Netflix is doing things now.
Yeah, that was my question. Is like, do you think the Netflix recipe? Is that real? First of all,
apparently it is real. I was reading Cary Fukunaga talk about a story where he was talking about how the subjectivity we were discussing earlier, where I have a scene with a really difficult subject matter in the first season of my of my 10-part show, right? And like maybe it involves like something like rape. And in the first 5 minutes, there's a rape. And then Netflix comes back and says, that can't be the first scene. And it's like, no, fuck you, man. We need to come in. We need to actually establish why this thing is happening. And we need to set a villain. We need to set an antagonist, protagonist situation. And we need to go on this journey. Yeah, well, here's the thing, man. We have all this data that says that specific thing, if we see it 5 minutes in, people turn off and they never come back. And so if that data is real and it's affecting the creative process, and it's hard to argue with that. You know, if that's real, like you know, it's not just we think this is wrong, I think this is right. It's like, wait, do you want people to watch this or not? And I think it's going to be challenging for us to maintain that level of creativity with that data, to tell those stories in a way that remain impactful, and ultimately maybe it is right, you know. But I'm going to trust. I think if someone's telling me that, if they can prove to me that that's the case, and what I'm writing may not be watched because they have this proof that people don't watch beyond 5 minutes if I introduce a scene like that, it's going to probably make me rethink it. Hopefully it doesn't make me rethink everything, but it's just another way of getting a note from a studio. It's probably more accurate than a person.
I got a question for both of you guys. It's funny, we were just talking about Netflix, man. So I'm in bed last night and I turned Netflix on. I'm looking for Killer Mike's new mini doc or whatever you would call that.
That show.
What's it? It's called Trigger Warning.
Oh yeah, Trigger Warning.
Trigger Warning. It's dope. I like it. Very thought provoking. But I initially when I clicked on it, it said you've reached the maximum amount of TVs. Remember we were just talking about anybody can use it.
Yeah.
So I immediately thought about you, and I was going to talk to you about that today.
What do you mean? Like they said that you
like log in.
You know how you can just share anybody's Netflix password in the past?
Okay.
Now it's like you've reached your max.
So I can tell you as a former YouTube deal maker, maybe I shouldn't be sharing this, but typically in negotiations and agreements, you know, and I was there a long time ago, we were including up to 6 logins per house, and that was a long time ago. So I'm guessing that it's probably more like double now to 12, but there is a maximum limit to how many you have.
I did research. I mean, I couldn't use it, so I had to the thing is, my family, like my sister, my parents, like, yo, what's your Netflix password? So that's what it is. They're using it. So I'm like, whatever, like y'all just use that. I created a new one. I went on the site and it's 3 different options. There's an $8.99, there's a $12.99, and a $15.99 option. $8.99 you get 1 screen. The middle option you get 2 screens. The maximum, like the big package, you get 4 screens. So that's the maximum amount. I got the maximum, but like the basic package with 1 screen is not in HD. What about their data is telling them that they would even offer something that's not in HD?
Yeah, I'm sure that I think there's also just business decisions, just like we were talking about from a creative perspective, where they've done a million little research projects on what's going to sell the most subscriptions. You know, oftentimes with subscription bundles, you try to offer an outrageously expensive one so that most Americans, most people in the world will always choose the middle, no matter what you show them. So that could be part of the strategy.
That's so interesting that option would not include HD, that they have information that crazy. Basically means that the people that are choosing that probably are still watching on like what Trinitrons, like
right. Yes. That blew my mind last night. I'm like, what is going on? I ended up getting the $15.99. They got me, but
I think it's so interesting, man. I think what we're talking about on a really big picture is like who's going to play with the algorithm and who's going to play against the algorithm. Like that's the way I see it in everything we've talked about, which is,
do you have a choice?
Well, I mean, that could be the Matrix illusion, right? Which is that when you look at these Instagram algorithms and all these social algorithms and stuff, it's like, I'm not going to do this. And it's like, yeah, man, you're playing by it no matter what. We were talking the other day about how JD's like, man, I don't have a Facebook account. And it's like, yeah, you do, man. First of all, you're on Instagram. And second of all, Facebook even keeps profiles of people that are not on the platform internally, right? That's come out. So you might be playing with the algorithm and you don't even know it. That's what's crazy.
I committed Facebook suicide in 2014, so I haven't had a Facebook account. But it's still there.
It's still
If
there.
I actually
it's
go,
still there. They're still collecting info on you.
no, and if I actually accidentally hit a link that will take me to the Facebook page, my name comes up in the logo in the little box with a password, just like to log, just tempting me to log back in, and I haven't done it. And but I have an Instagram account. I mean, yeah, I have it. You know, it's like, yeah, it's just a different version of it now. It's a streamlined version of Facebook.
So yeah, I mean, I have to commend you though, because I think what you're saying is you want to stay true to an artistic vision. You're trying to take these ideas of what I would deem as the algorithm, and sort of put them over to the side. You recognize it's there, but you have to keep on moving. You have to keep on creating great stuff. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what it comes down to.
Well, yeah, and I have to play ball with it. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say it's not my problem. I'm an artist, and I'm going to make my art. I mean, look, I'm not I am not independently wealthy to a point where I could just tell everyone to fuck off and their algorithm. You know, I'm just going to make what I make. Nor am I good enough to do that. You know, so I think it's you know, I have to be respectful of especially when people are paying me of what that process is. And it's honestly, I actually find usually I don't find, for the most part, the more I go with the stream and sort of just go back to the thing we were talking about of offering a point of view and listening and working within the spirit of collaboration. I tend to find that I don't always have to compromise that much. It's really not that much. I mean, at the end of the day, if a logo is going on it, if you're really truly an artist, then you're already compromised. So, but I don't believe in that. I mean, I believe that all of it is intertwined. So, I don't know. I don't ever feel like I win or lose. Sometimes I feel like some stuff turns out better than others, and some stuff is great. Sometimes, but no one bats 1,000 in this. So, I don't know. I don't know that it's all like, if it's damaging that much, you know.
How do you market yourself?
It's so funny you say that because, you know, I have through the production company I work with, we have representation, you know, and like they go out sort of and put you up for jobs like the way an agent would. And when they find out about stuff, they try to put you up. And a lot of it is through that. A lot of it is through just horizontal networking and like getting introduced to people. This thing that I'm doing through Nike was someone introduced me to, actually my girlfriend she knew one of the guys who founded Franchise Magazine, and she saw him at Intelligentsia. We're having coffee, and introduced me to him, and we started talking. And then next thing you know, he's connected to those guys about this project, and he calls me. It's just things like that. And then also, I think there's one thing I do think is interesting about social media, right? We're talking about perception and like what people are doing and how it's all broadcast. Like, I market myself. It's really important that I have to beat my own drum. And I can beat my own drum by saying, one thing I've learned is like, it's not necessarily like, look at what I did. It's more about, look at what I'm doing. So I've adopted, I think, and I've seen it be way more effective, is that if I'm posting things that are process driven and shows me out there doing, then I feel like the perception amongst people that might be paying attention to me is that I'm a maker and I'm a creator, and I'm validated that way. And then they're interested, and I don't necessarily share what I'm doing, and I'm very cryptic and vague about it, but it creates a little bit of intrigue. And I think you have to do that. You know, no one's going to do it for you. Even the people who represent you, they're busy. They have other people. I think you have to market yourself by showing yourself as you would want to be seen. Like, are you out there making? Are you out there doing stuff? Are you curious about the world? Who are the kinds of interesting people that you're hanging out with? Like, what makes you different than just any other director, right? Like, the things I post about tend to be about things that have to do with what's up in this room. So when they know that they want to work with me, they look at my Instagram and they go, well, this guy clearly loves basketball, and he loves 90s culture, or he loves hip hop, or he loves movies. He's a historian of all these different, he loves art. Like, then they know what kind of person they're getting.
Yeah, I love that thought, and to me, like I always respected MTV actually, because making the video was always more popular than the video itself, and they had the insight to see that. And then what they did with Laguna Beach and the hills, I thought was just genius because at that time that was pretty groundbreaking because no one knew if that was real or not, and it was like, wait a minute, these are the real kids that are actually living this culture and doing and making and sort of creating this culture. And then everyone else you're watching, that's the end result. So don't watch the end result. Watch the actual, MTV was basically saying, watch the actual stuff being made by the real kids. And that just, I really took that as an important lesson for my work. And it sounds like you sort of think about it the same way with social media. I think that's genius.
Well,
personally.
I think it's like there's a fine line, right? Because there's people out there doing what I'm talking about, but fabricating a complete lie, right? So like, if I'm out there like going to Staples Center and shooting, taking photos of being around a basketball game or being somewhere or shooting around a set or doing something and then they find out that none of it was work related. Eventually you have to show what you were doing. Like people might go, oh, you were on set with Jay Williams. Oh, that was a photo of you with Jay Williams. Like that was cool. Like, can we see that? Like eventually you have to show them the product. So, you have to go out there and market what you're doing. But then a lot of what people are doing now is like, they're presenting complete fabrications of a life that isn't even real. And so, this person might look like they have this glamorous life, but they're taking, when you really get to find out what they're doing, it's like none of it is anywhere near that reality.
I mean, I think that's why I like JD so much. I think JD goes out of his way not to even show some of the stuff he's doing and the life he leads.
Hey, you're trying to stay mysterious too, right? Like you don't need everyone to know. But you're a guy who grew up like, I always find this fascinating is like, especially you grew up around an element of fame, right? So like, and you were obviously raised, by a good father, and so and people that I think have that sort of background,
Trying to get me in trouble, man, and a great mother.
and a great mother. I was queued that up, but no, you mean like that background. I think you could go one of two ways with it, but you don't. There's still something to be said for like you don't have to tell everyone every single thing.
Absolutely, that's kind of what I was getting at. I mean, anybody who knows my pops, that's him. Like, you can't find a piece of media on him. It's rare. When he just did Steph and Clay sit down with him and Isaiah really, really had to convince him. Like, NBA TV, not that, he's the president of the United States. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that's kind of just always been him. He's been a low-key, quiet guy, and he believes in that, and I think it rubbed off on me to a degree. Like, I kind of did the Facebook exile like you years ago, kind of got off Instagram probably 4 years ago. I did it for a while. I mean, I was 18, 19, 20, playing around with it, but I think I appreciate that sense of mystique. But at the same time, I think it's a balance. Ben is getting me going. I got to have some presence on Instagram to a degree.
But when you meet somebody, like if you're out in a restaurant or a club, or you meet someone, a girl, whatever, and how long does it take you to, does it take you a while to reveal your background, who you come from, who your father was, or do you like let that come out?
First of all, I have a girlfriend, man, so that doesn't never happen.
Well, no,
you're really getting him in trouble.
No,
today.
I'm using an example. So say you're just at Starbucks and some guy just starts talking to you. I don't know.
No, I mean, if it's just, it'll have to be a mutual connection. Like if I see, for example, I was in Philly a few months ago, and I don't know if you remember the player Aaron McKee.
Yeah.
Him and my father were teammates towards the end of my father's career. I remember him when I was a kid. I look a lot different than I was a kid. So if I saw him, I'd be like, you don't remember me? Like, you know what I'm saying? So in a situation like that, yes, but, or if it's, it'll have to be a mutual connection where they're going to be like, oh yeah, man, like, man, how you doing? That type of thing. But I'm not broadcasting.
Well, I've seen guys who've played like there was a guy that played volleyball at UCLA, right? Which is like when you play volleyball at UCLA, it's not as big of a sport as basketball, but within the Southern California community, that's status.
Yeah.
And when he was like 27, 28, we would go, he would just lead with that all the time, always. And I'm like, man, that is all you like, and it would work, like it would work on like for a while, it would work, the athlete thing, like, but then, obviously, I don't think he's doing it now, this many years later. But I always found that interesting, like, where like, well, you want to offer, like, you want to come in and lead with that, like, lead with who you are. I always like to lead with who I am.
Yeah, for sure.
Then rather than like, and the best is probably when you're probably talking to someone who is giving you their point of view on all these different things that you probably have experienced firsthand, and then towards the end of it, you sort of all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, well, how do you know all this stuff? You're like, oh, well, my dad's. It's like, oh, all right, well, I probably sounded very stupid.
Yeah, man. Nah, 100%. That's caused some awkward situations for people, that exact scenario that you're describing. So, yeah, I definitely try to stay away from that, man, unless it's a mutual connection there. But I know exactly the type of guy you're talking about, the volleyball guy.
Right.
Those are
The volleyball guy. Shout out to the volleyball guy right now. Amir, I feel like we want to make sure you don't miss your phone call.
We got a few minutes.
We got a few minutes?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right. Well,
I got one wrap-up question.
Yeah, please.
I know
Please
where
do.
you're going to go. I want to poll both of you guys because I have my own opinion. Favorite Super Bowl commercial from this past one? If you guys watched it, it was a pretty bad game.
No, I actually really liked the game.
You did?
I thought the game was like,
That's the first person I've heard say that.
look, I'm not going to say I know football because I don't know if I thought that game was like, from an X's and O's standpoint, was two heavyweights standing toe to toe, punching each other in the mouth. Defensively, it was amazing. Yeah. The strategy that was going on in that game, and some of the plays that turned 5 plays you could count that game came down to. No, it wasn't like the track meet, super exciting. Not as much. I personally enjoyed it. Commercial wise, though, to answer your question, the one. So this goes back to Mystique, right? And like the one thing that the brands are not doing the way they used to was waiting till the Super Bowl to reveal their Super Bowl commercial. So like now, like a week or 2 weeks in advance now, we're seeing all of them. So we're not really. It's almost like we're not surprised by them. And when I saw Bud Light do the Game of Thrones thing, where all of a sudden this like the Bud Knight you just think it's going to be another funny Bud Light commercial, and then the mountain kills him, and then the dragon came in. I was like, did they just fucking do that?
Right.
That made me like go. I was asking that out loud.
Yeah. And
that's to me like that's what a Super Bowl commercial should be. Like, did they just fucking do that?
Right.
And that was awesome. I thought that was the best for me.
What you think, Ben?
I love that question. This is going to sound super lame because I know they've taken a lot of criticism, but I actually like that Zoe Kravitz commercial just because it made you stop and it made you like it's so hard to get attention as you're describing. Like that Bud Light commercial, for instance, like it did make you stop. And like the Zoe Kravitz thing made me stop. I was like, wait, what? I actually had it on mute. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I had to turn it up. And so when I turn it up, I'm like, all right, they did its job.
It's a great strategy. A couple of years ago, like there was when Super Bowl commercials was just about explosions and celebrities and babies and outer space. It just seemed like it was going that. How can we make it big, big, big and loud? Dodge or Chevy or one of the truck companies made a commercial. There's something to be said about being quiet in the loud space and there's a commercial called God Made a Farmer. And it was like the speech that Paul Harvey gave this National Association of Farmers, and very poetic. It was all black and white still imagery, beautifully edited together. And it was like that, all of a sudden you're watching commercials with all these celebrities, and then that came on and that really stopped people. That commercial you're talking about, it did get people's attention, but it was also tied to some.
Yeah, it was
fetish.
negative. It was, and there's a trend on YouTube with it.
Yes.
So I know it was like negative, but I think it worked. That was my point.
I think it worked too. What about you, Jordan? What was your favorite?
So I had two. I like the pregame with Peyton Manning and that actor.
They don't talk about though. They always do. They always do great promos. They did it last year too. They win Emmys for sports
really?
Emmys, and I'm glad you brought that up because no one talks about that.
Yeah.
And John Malkovich he's at the Roman Coliseum. That was great writing, and Peyton's acting is just going next level.
Peyton is funny as hell.
He's so good.
Peyton is hilarious. I love the way they were playing off each other.
Yeah.
And then in game, I really enjoyed the NFL 100 with all the players and stuff.
That was
I don't even know what is the NFL 100.
I think they're celebrating 100.
Oh, 100 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was another commercial where you're like, did they really just do that?
Yeah. I like that one. That was good.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Guys, all right. We have to have Amir back. We didn't even really get into like some juicy entrepreneurial marketing stuff, but we'll just have to harass Amir later. But we had just a great conversation. Thank you for being here, Amir.
Thank you. I hope some of it was useful.
Oh my God, I love this episode. This is one of our best.
I was just about to say it. Usually he says that after a few, not all the time. I don't think I've ever said that. This might have been my favorite one. So
Wow.
far.
All right, there you go. There you go.
And you guys set a high bar, man. You guys set a high bar.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
You guys are good off each other. I'm telling you, this is something. I'm a salesman. I would say like I like this. I like what's going on here.
All right. So thank you all, and we will be back again next time.
Yes, sir.